At 04:30 hours on June 6, 1944, just outside Maucourt, France, the world remains dark and damp with morning fog. The rumble of distant artillery shakes the ground, a low tremor that travels through boot soles and into bone. Colonel Terry Allen stands at the edge of a temporary assembly area, his boots grinding against wet gravel. The sound is sharp in the pre-dawn silence. Allen glances at his watch, the luminous dial glowing faintly. The 36th Infantry Division is scheduled to push through heavily fortified German defensive positions, but the timeline has already slipped. He scans the perimeter, observing soldiers huddled in small groups, their movements slow with exhaustion, but underscored by grim determination. They shuffle rather than rush, waiting for fire support, for air cover. At that moment, the radio crackles. Intel reports German armor moving toward your sector. Recommend immediate displacement. Allen's hand tightens around his helmet rim. He does not speak. Every instinct, every lesson from North Africa and Sicily tells him the same thing. Failure is not an option here. They cannot afford to wait any longer. In late April 1944, Fort Benning, Georgia becomes a crucible of preparation. Colonel Terry Allen stands at the edge of a training field, watching infantry companies march past in tight formation. They move with mechanical precision, each step synchronized to the cadence of military discipline. But Allen's eyes narrow as he studies the men more closely, searching for the cracks beneath the surface of regimented order. He is restless, a combat veteran who has tasted the scorching heat of North African deserts and the blood-soaked mud of Sicilian hillsides. Now he faces the most demanding challenge of his career, preparing the 36th Infantry Division for the liberation of France. His assignment is clear, his responsibility immense. Allen knows something that textbooks and training manuals cannot teach. Wars are not won by drills alone, but by the men who execute them under fire. He adjusts his helmet, feeling the familiar weight of command settle across his shoulders. In the nearby mess hall, soldiers joke over coffee and cigarettes, their laughter a brief respite from the intensity of preparation. For Allen, there is only tension, the constant awareness of lives hanging in the balance of his decisions. He does not motivate through speeches or slogans. He leads through example, through action, through presence. His reputation precedes him wherever he goes. Terrible. Terry Allen, a nickname earned not through cruelty but through his uncompromising demand for results and his willingness to drive both himself and his men to the limit. The soldiers want a hero to follow. Allen wants results that will bring them home. The English Channel is choppy on the morning of June 6, 1944, its grey-green waters churned by wind and tide. The sky hangs low and overcast, a ceiling of cloud that seems to press down on the invasion fleet. Inside the landing craft, the sound of waves slapping against the hull is deafening, a rhythm punctuated by the distant thunder of naval bombardment. Sharp flashes illuminate the horizon as artillery fire rains down on the Norman coast. The troops brace themselves, gripping their rifles and equipment as the boat pitches and rolls. Allen stands near the front of the landing craft, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. Around him, soldiers fight to control their nerves, some praying quietly, others staring at nothing. Allen's gaze remains fixed forward, calm and resolute, locked on the beach that grows closer with each passing second. As the ramp drops and the boat grinds onto the sand, hell erupts. The assault waves crash against German defensive positions with brutal force. Bullets slice through the air in streams, invisible death that cuts down men before they reach the waterline. Mortar rounds detonate in geysers of sand and water. Men collapse in the chaos, falling where they stand, but Allen does not flinch. He moves forward, his voice cutting through the roar of battle. "Move, goddammit! Get to cover!" The words are sharp, commanding, impossible to ignore. The men respond not out of fear but out of belief in his leadership, in his ability to see them through this maelstrom. In the distance, a German MG-42 machine gun opens fire, its distinctive sound, a ripping, tearing roar, echoing across the beach. The chaos is absolute, overwhelming, but Alan has already made his decision. They will push forward regardless of cost. His men follow because he shows them how. By nightfall, the beaches are secured, though at terrible cost. Bodies lie scattered in the surf. The enemy's defensive line has been breached, their positions severely weakened. Alan knows this is only the beginning. On June 7th, 1944, near Maucourt, France, the attack continues without pause. Alan's 36th Infantry Division has made steady progress inland, but German defences remain formidable and unyielding. Tanks rumble across the battlefield, their treads grinding through mud and debris, sending vibrations through the earth that can be felt hundreds of meters away. The Germans are determined to hold this line, to make every meter of ground cost American blood. Alan gathers his staff officers around a map hastily spread across the hood of a jeep. He listens as they deliver reports, their voices thick with fatigue and stress. "Supply lines are compromised, sir. Ammunition is running low." Another officer adds, "Their ATB limited guns are tearing our armour apart. We need air support immediately." Alan studies the map, his eyes tracing roads, elevations, defensive positions. His mind races through calculations, time, distance, firepower, risk. The numbers are not favourable. The enemy has superior positioning and firepower in this sector, but Alan has faced impossible odds before. The Germans may have the advantage in guns and terrain, but they do not have his soldiers, men who have trained for this moment, who trust him to lead them through. "We push forward," Alan commands, his voice flat and final. "We take the town, whatever it takes." The next several hours dissolve into a blur of motion and violence. Tanks explode in fireballs of fuel and ammunition. Men shout orders that are barely audible over the roar of engines and gunfire. Dust and smoke choke the air, reducing visibility to meters. Through it all, Alan never stops moving, never stops directing, never stops thinking ahead. His hand remains steady, his voice unwavering. He is already planning the next phase of the assault before the current one is complete. Every decision matters, every moment counts, every life depends on getting this right. By June 10th, 1944, near Maucourt, the days have begun to blend into a continuous cycle of combat, rest and preparation. The smell of smoke is constant, acrid and choking. Blood stains the ground. Adrenaline becomes a currency more valuable than food or water. Alan has survived every ambush, every counterattack, every crisis with a single-minded purpose. Maintain momentum, keep moving forward, but the strain is beginning to show in his men. Casualties mount with each engagement. There are fewer familiar faces each morning at assembly. The German resistance has not weakened. If anything, it has intensified. Every advance is met with fierce counterattacks. The roads are cratered and impassable. Tanks that once rolled forward with mechanical pride now sit abandoned, burned-out hulks marking the path of battle. But Alan does not slow. His orders remain precise, stripped of unnecessary words. He pushes forward because stopping means defeat, means wasted sacrifice. When a young lieutenant breaks down, trembling from exhaustion and stress, Alan steps forward without hesitation. His hand rests on the younger man's shoulder, firm but not harsh. "Get a grip, soldier. We're not here to die. We're here to win." Alan's voice is low, intense, carrying the weight of absolute conviction. The lieutenant nods, wiping sweat and grime from his face. Alan's eyes never leave him, holding his gaze until the moment passes. We are here to win, not to survive. To win. On June 12, 1944, the situation near Maucourt shifts, suddenly and violently. The Germans are breaking, but not in the way Alan anticipated. An unexpected counterattack strikes his positions with the force of a sledgehammer. German tanks, fast, well coordinated, cut through infantry positions like scythes through wheat. The radios crackle with distress calls. "We need backup. Our armor is knocked out." The voice is tight with panic. Men are being overwhelmed. Alan does not hesitate. He orders the line to hold, knowing this moment could determine everything. The radio crackles again, a different voice, calmer. "We have an artillery battery positioned 2 miles northwest. We can hit them before they reach the town center." Alan studies his map, calculating angles, distances, timing. It is a gamble. Friendly fire is always a risk, and the German advance is fast. But waiting means certain disaster. He gives the order. Within minutes, the sound of outgoing artillery fills the air, a deep whooshing followed by distant impacts. Explosions tear through the advancing German formation. Tanks are disabled, their tracks blown off, or turrets penetrated. The counterattack stalls, then breaks. For the first time in days, Alan allows himself a moment to breathe deeply. The crisis has passed, but the cost is written across the battlefield in destroyed equipment and fallen soldiers. By June 14, 1944, Alan knows they have pushed the Germans back significantly, but something feels wrong. The constant barrage of combat, the sight of men falling around him daily, it is taking a toll that goes beyond physical exhaustion. Even the toughest soldiers are beginning to show cracks. Alan sees it in their eyes, fear creeping in where determination once lived, doubt replacing confidence. His own fatigue is becoming undeniable. He feels it in his legs, his back, the way each step requires more effort than the last. His body is wearing down under the accumulated stress of weeks without proper rest. But he rallies the men regardless, pushing them to advance just 1 more meter, to hold just 1 more hour. In his gut, he knows they are all approaching their breaking point. The next engagement could be the one that shatters them, but Alan cannot show weakness, cannot reveal doubt. As long as he stands and leads, the soldiers will follow. They will keep fighting because he shows them how to continue when continuation seems impossible. The alternative, collapse, retreat, failure, is unthinkable. On June 16, 1944, near Maucourt, the final push begins. Alan's division is exhausted, battered by weeks of continuous combat, but they move with purpose born of desperation and determination. The Germans are retreating in the sector, falling back to consolidate their defensive lines, but Alan knows they will not surrender ground without a fight. He orders a final assault on their last stronghold in the area, an abandoned farmhouse at the center of town, now converted into a defensive position. As the soldiers move forward through rubble-strewn streets, the world seems to slow. Each footstep crunches on broken glass and shattered brick. Each breath is measured, controlled. Each shot fired carries the weight of accumulated exhaustion. The farmhouse looms ahead, its walls pockmarked by gunfire, its windows dark and empty. Alan moves forward with his lead elements, rifle at the ready, every sense heightened. The tension is palpable, electric, crackling in the air like static before a storm. The silence is unnatural, oppressive. Then, without warning, a burst of gunfire erupts from the farmhouse. Chaos explodes. Soldiers dive for cover. Alan barks orders, directing fire, coordinating movement. The battle is brief, but intense. A concentrated fury of small arms fire and grenades. When the shooting stops, the farmhouse is secured. German defenders are dead or captured. The stronghold has fallen. On June 17, 1944, the mission is complete. The Germans have been routed from the sector, their stronghold destroyed, their defensive line broken. But victory feels hollow to Alan as he surveys the battlefield in the grey morning light. Men lie motionless in the dirt, their faces frozen in the expressions they wore at the moment of death. Their sacrifice hangs in the air, a weight that cannot be measured or dismissed. Alan looks down at his watch, a habitual gesture that has marked every phase of this operation. The time, the place, the battle, all of it is over now. But the price has been paid in blood and lives. His men cheer around him, their voices hoarse with exhaustion and relief. They have survived. They have won. But Alan cannot find words to share their celebration. They have accomplished their mission, achieved their objective, but at what cost? What have they really won? His eyes move slowly across the field of bodies, American and German alike. Victory carries a burden that no amount of tactical success can lighten. The weight settles on his shoulders, heavier than any equipment he has carried. On June 18, 1944, near Maucourt, the battle may be won, but the consequences are only beginning to emerge. The men are exhausted, many of them emotionally as well as physically. Their souls bear scars that no medical treatment can address. Alan can see it clearly now. The fear that lurks in their eyes is no longer fear of the enemy, but something deeper, more insidious. It is the fear of what they have become, of what they have seen, of what war has taken from them that can never be returned. Alan realizes then that the enemy they face is not only German soldiers and tanks. It is the toll that sustained violence takes on the human spirit, the way it erodes the foundations of self, until men no longer recognize who they were before the war began. This understanding settles over him like the morning fog that still clings to the battlefield, obscuring the landscape and making everything seem distant and unreal. On June 19, 1944, Alan sits alone in his command tent, the canvas walls offering minimal shelter from the sounds of ongoing operations outside. The radio crackles intermittently, carrying reports and updates. The distant rumble of artillery continues in the background, a sound that has become so constant it is almost unnoticeable. His hands shake slightly as he lights a cigarette, the ember glowing orange in the dim light, filtered through canvas. He knows the price of leadership now, more clearly than ever before. The men who followed him into battle, the lives that were lost, all of it rests on his shoulders. Every decision he made, every order he gave, resulted in consequences he must now carry. Some decisions saved lives, others cost them. The mathematics of command are brutal and unforgiving. He draws smoke deep into his lungs, holds it, exhales slowly. The weight does not diminish. It will never diminish. This is the burden he accepted when he took command, but understanding it intellectually and feeling it emotionally are entirely different experiences. On June 20th, 1944, Alan examines the medals and commendations that have been prepared for distribution to his men. He holds them in his palm, feeling their physical weight, which seems insignificant compared to their symbolic burden. The battle is over. The victory has been recorded in after-action reports and official communications, but the scars of war remain, visible and invisible. Alan looks at the medals with narrowed eyes, turning them over in his hand. They are meant to honor sacrifice, to recognize courage and performance under fire, but they feel hollow to him, inadequate representations of what his men endured and what they lost. The emotional toll of sustained combat is something no medal could ever measure or compensate for. No piece of metal can restore what war takes away. Alan sets the medals aside on his field desk, his movements careful and deliberate. There is work still to do: reorganization, resupply, preparation for whatever comes next. The war continues. His responsibility continues. The weight remains. On June 21st, 1944, near Maucourt, Alan does not seek recognition or celebration. He has never needed public acclaim or official commendation. His only concern has been, and remains, the men who followed him into battle, their survival, their welfare, the legacy they will carry with them when this war finally ends. The soldiers do not fully understand it yet, but they have learned something more valuable than tactics and weapon systems. They have learned what it means to endure, to push beyond perceived limits, to continue functioning when every instinct screams for them to stop. They have learned that survival is not passive but active, requiring constant choice and effort. Alan watches them as they begin the process of recovery and reorganization, seeing in their faces the marks of transformation. They are no longer the men who landed on the beaches of Normandy. They have been forged by fire into something harder, more resilient, and irrevocably changed. On July 5, 1944, Alan prepares to leave the immediate battlefield area near Maucourt. The 36th Infantry Division is being repositioned for future operations. As he looks back across the scarred landscape, the cratered roads, the destroyed buildings, the fields still littered with the debris of combat, he realizes that victory is never final. It is simply one battle in an ongoing war, one objective achieved in a campaign that continues. The real fight, the one that will stay with him for the rest of his life, is the internal struggle to reconcile what he has done, what he has ordered, what he has witnessed. The story of Terry Allen is not just one of military competence or tactical skill. It is a story of survival. Not only physical survival, but the survival of humanity in the face of inhumanity. It is the story of leading through darkness when the path is unclear, of making impossible choices with inadequate information, of learning what true victory means when the cost is measured in lives rather than territory. Alan turns away from the battlefield and moves forward, carrying the weight of command into an uncertain future. The war continues. His duty continues. The burden remains.